when I first encountered the sound of silence, I hadn't ordained as a bhikkhu yet. I was a samanera, a novice monk, and it was that year in Nong Khai, before meeting Luang Por Chah, that I began to have these experiences of silence. To me, I could hear it. You know, it was like when you're opening your senses, the hearing is kind of open to anything, to sound. And then when there was no particular sound, there was this silence, which was like a kind of buzz or, a vibration. And at first I just dismissed it as all things are impermanent. The Buddha said everything's impermanent. So I just dismissed it, it's impermanent. But I began to notice that my attention to it was impermanent. I'd easily get distracted from it, but it was always here and now. And I made up a koan, a kind of Zen-like koan about it. The Buddha said all conditions are impermanent. Is there a condition that's permanent? And of course I expected to not find any condition permanent, which I could not find any permanent condition. But this sound of silence, this vibration, seemed to be always present, even though my attention on it would be so desultory. It wasn't, it was always here and now. And so then I didn't know what it was. And it's not, in those terms it's not referred to in the scriptures as sound of silence. But I began to realize that it was a kind of background of forms. And what is the background of forms is space. And what is the background of space is consciousness. So as in the 6 elements, consciousness, space, earth, fire, water, and air, consciousness is the background. The starting point is, without consciousness, how could there be space or forms? If there was no space, how could forms manifest? So suddenly consciousness becomes very obvious that it has no beginning or end. It's the deathless reality, the ground of being, the cosmic pulse, or whatever name you want to give it. It doesn't really have a name, but it's apparent here and now and timeless. It's where you experience timelessness. And that's Dhamma. You realize Dhamma. So then the sound of silence combined with consciousness as consciousness and Dhamma, suddenly, and Nibbana, all these words that you can't really define become realized as reality itself, ultimate reality, or Dhamma. So when I talk about Dhamma, it's not talking about some idea of Dhamma, because for most of us who are not Buddhists in cultural conditioning, Dhamma is just another foreign word we take into the English context. But when we take Dhamma's refuge, what are we taking refuge in? And of course, it's translated as ultimate reality or absolute truth, which is a nice way of defining it. But what is absolute reality? or truth. What is absolute truth? You know, you can conceive it intellectually, but what is it in reality? You know, we can take refuge in God as a concept, but in reality, what is God? You know, so then you start questioning reality is here and now. This is a real moment, timeless, and consciousness is apparent here and now. If I ask you, Matt, if you're conscious, you're immediately going to say yes. You're not going to ask Ajahn Sumedho. That's something, a fact, isn't it? It's a fact. You know, you don't question it. But it's so apparent here and now that we don't notice it because we're caught up in believing in time, the past and the future, and the present we don't give much attention to unless it's some experience that we're having through the senses. So if you're starting a fire out there, then I'm conscious of the fire, not aware of the sound of silence.
What?
Not in a state of bliss and just let the fire burn, but suddenly, you know, the fire needs to be dealt with, so you do it. But in the unawakened mind of human beings, individual human beings, it's very much being, when there's no fire, nothing to do, then you're reading a book, smoking a cigarette, munching on a biscuit, or there's always reading a book, watching the television, calling your friends on the phone. There's always, and nowadays with high tech, there's so many interesting distractions you can use. But it's, you know, so it takes this kind of commitment and determination to be the silence itself. And that's the path, the Eightfold Path. That's right understanding, which leads to right effort, right I forget, right concentration. So this is, you know, it's all about enlightenment here and now, rather than practicing now to get enlightened in the future. It's a total shift from the cultural conditioning that you and I have received, which is all based on materialism. You know, so which is based on the elements that change, like earth, fire, water, and air are changing elements. It's climate change, it's environmental change, it's social change, it's personal change. It's all about change. And that's the earth, fire, water, and air in space, because they couldn't manifest if there was no space. But if there was no consciousness, there'd be no way to have space or forms. You know, so suddenly consciousness is the ground of being. God or unconditioned love, it's perfect. And then you realize that's what human beings are, basically perfect. But they don't know it, because we're told we're imperfect, that we've got to become something we aren't. And so the whole delusion of conditioning, social conditioning, you begin to see just in the Western view of the self, about how you look, about race, the color of your skin, your nationality, your gender. All these are issues of terrible importance to people. They fight over and quarrel over and kill each other because they don't realize their true nature. They make problems about races, sex, everything that they come in contact with, they make a problem about. And where in Dhamma, all the problems cease. You know, so it's, and some people ask me, because I've just recently, last month, turned 90 years old, is old age a problem? And for me, it's just a natural changing happens to an old body. An old white man's body at 90 years is like this, and I'm not the body. So it's not a problem. The body has problems, but as reality, I don't make problems about the problems of the body. I just adapt to necessity, to what is important to do, and to move the body around and feed it and take care of it.